Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look at Ethereum Classic here, and this is a big fan favorite for my community, so thank you again for requesting I cover this. Sorry it's been a little while since I have, but there was really no point in doing so because the price action was just non-existent, and we've got some good volume, some good volatility here today. So do again want to thank you for recommending I cover this. Just know I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You should always do your own research. Okay, now I have a link in the description below if you want to do less research. It is for my Telegram community, of course, because that does help you get more information. Furthermore, I have a signal group as well in case you're interested there, where I send out 3 to 5 signals per week, giving you an understanding of good entry points and essentially just helping you find those because I have more time in the day to be able to research than the average person, and the fact that I just happen to love it, so it's a win-win for everyone. Okay, all right. So all the more reason I love to make these videos for you, my awesome, awesome community. Thanks again for joining me here today. So let's go ahead and take a look. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Ethereum Classic. And just before we do, if you're new to the channel, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first, just to get a baseline on the market so we know exactly what's going on, and we can hopefully identify a correlation between these coins. Now, first things first is Bitcoin. Let's take a look here. And Bitcoin is actually doing fairly well. As we can see, we got this breakout here recently that just came up. And to bring my mind actually a little bit, let's clarify and preface here. First of all, this is a 4-hour chart on TradingView, desktop application. And my moving averages that I use is a 200, which is this purple line. That's a 200 SMA. And the orange line, which is the 50 SMA. Okay. And as we see previously, the 50-day moving average was rejected about 16 hours in a row, broke through, and ever since we are trending upwards. And this is fantastic news too. This bar hasn't closed yet, but we are breaking above the 200-day moving average, which is very, very good sign. Okay, so we're now at 36,300 and progressing upwards. So all is well here in the sense that Bitcoin was closer to 30,000 no less than 3 days ago. So pretty good stuff here. Now, support level is 30,000. Major resistance is 42,000. There is another resistance at about 41,000 that was tested a few times, and also a major support, or secondary support rather, at 31,000. So we kind of got this range of 10,000 that is kind of working within this little channel. And as you can kind of see, if we look out a little bit further, this is the longest sideways action we've had from Bitcoin in quite some time. So hoping for a breakout in an upward fashion there to start trending back up towards 50,000 plus, then all of our altcoins will be looking pretty shiny. So we're hoping for that right now. Now moving on to Ethereum. This is the 4-hour chart on Ethereum. Same can be said for Ethereum as well. Only difference is it hasn't surpassed the 200-day moving average, but that's okay because of the fact that Ethereum is finally back on track. Like we've had what I don't know, it's like 20-25% growth in the past. What is it? Right in the last 2 or 3 days. So it's been doing very well, which is nice because this is a typical Ethereum. It's supposed to be doing very well when Bitcoin goes sideways or goes upwards. See, Bitcoin was going sideways here where Ethereum was increasing. So that's a very good sign. All right, we got to focus on the positive here and celebrate the wins when we got them. So hopefully you can take some profit, or just hopefully continue to regain your portfolio, because I think a lot of us are probably still in the red at this point, depending on when you got in, of course. So that's Ethereum. Keep in mind we have a major support at 1,700 and a major resistance at 2,900 that was tested about 10 times. So if it's tested again, there's a likelihood of it breaking because it's becomes weaker the more often it's tested, right? So if you go 10 plus times testing a major support or resistance level, it will inevitably break. So we're a little ways off from that, but I do foresee that happening in the fairly near future. All right, so Ethereum Classic. Let's take a look at the 1-day chart first. The way we start with this, just to get a baseline on the big picture so we know exactly what's going on, because you want to understand a currency's history before you just jump right in, right? Just because today has positive gains doesn't mean that it's a good coin overall in the big picture. And as we can kind of see here, Ethereum Classic took off back in the day here. It actually wasn't that long ago. That was about a month and a half. Okay, we could say about 2 months ago it started its run. And what we're looking at here is and I always like to identify this. So you can look here, 398%. You could basically just say 400% of an increase within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. right? So it's no wonder why the price retraced down so hard so fast. Just keep in mind that, of course, the Elon candle, which is right here, sent the price down, and then, of course, the China candle sent it down even further. So that was pretty normal, pretty standard for other currencies. However, simple fact of the matter is, anytime you have a major increase like this, the retracement is typically about 50%. All right, so if we go kind of split the difference, we go about halfway down. The price for Ethereum Classic should be about $93 or $94. Excuse me. And that, to me, is where we're going to be shooting for here in the fairly near future. Now, are we going to hit that in the next couple of days? No, probably not. I mean, unless Bitcoin goes on a tear and surpasses 42,000, we'll probably see Ethereum Classic go sideways for a little bit and then increase again as well. But as we can tell, Ethereum Classic has a tendency of taking off at random times with no specific rhyme or reason. Because back here, May 1st through May 5th, or May 6th rather, Bitcoin wasn't doing all that much. It was still kind of going sideways because of all the action that happened in April from the 17th to the 25th. Okay. So sideways action for Bitcoin caused Ethereum Classic to take off. And of course, it retraced itself back down much further than it should have, right? Because if we take this both these candles, the Elon candle and the China candle, if we take those away, Ethereum Classic would still be in the 90 to 120 range, no doubt. So do I foresee Ethereum Classic coming up to about 90? Yes, absolutely. But why don't we mark some support levels here first and resistance lines, because I do recall 82, 83 being a pretty strong one. So let's go ahead and put that here. And then 120 was another one as well. I think we're a ways off from that, of course. But generally speaking, this is the channel we want to be back within. Okay, so I'll just leave that up there. But big picture here, we are looking at RSI's under, still considered right in the middle, essentially. And we do have the MACD, which is nice. Look at that, swinging upward fashion. This is that convergence that you look for. So as a swing trader, when you see that, that's typically a good sign to invest. Okay. Now, traditionally, I like to identify the convergence on the 4-hour chart because it gives you a better signal, and overall, you can get to your goal a lot faster. In other words, it responds quicker to price action, and we probably would have caught this a lot sooner, right? Much earlier. Either way, that's a good sign on the one-day chart. Same with the RSI being kind of right in the middle, for lack of better terms, just barely over 45.50. We're looking pretty good there. And then, of course, we got the support level, which is a 200-day moving average here, as a support was never really truly tested, but it's still progressing upwards, which is a good sign. And the 50 is coming back down to potentially work as a resistance, but I put more weight on the 4-hour chart for the moving averages, so let's take a look at that next. All right, and as we can see, we are well over RSI, basically over 70 on the RSI, and obviously the MACD is swinging upwards. So, for lack of better terms, we're definitely in a bullish trend, bullish momentum. Only concern I have here is that this is ramped up pretty fast, pretty hard, and we might see a slight retracement and or some sideways action. It'll probably more so work sideways because the price is so oversold for Ethereum Classic that it has to come back up. I mean, we got this, what should be a support level up here at about 82, 83, and we're not even, we're like 2/3 of the way there. If you consider starting at 0, right? So generally speaking, we're looking pretty good here. RSI, again, is over 70, not a big concern. I wouldn't consider selling at this point. I would recommend waiting until RSI starts coming back down and then seeing where we stand if you're going to start trimming some profit. That is, again, if you got in early. Majority of us probably still have a position open, so you don't want to trim it at all because a lot of us got in the 70, 80 plus range, right? But all in all, very good stuff here. And here's the great thing, and this hasn't closed yet, but if this candle can close above the 200-day moving average on the 4-hour chart, we're going to be looking very good for that to become a support level. Okay. Same thing can be said here with the 50-day moving average. That broke above, stayed above, so the 50 is working as a support level. But this is the important one here. We want the 200 to break the 200 and stay above. In other words, we have to close this candle above that in order for that to be relevant and to be a support level. Okay, so it looks like it's trying to figure that out right now. Let's take a closer look at the 1-hour chart, and we're just going to use this for the Ishimoku cloud. And big surprise here, as you can see, it broke above. We are considered in bullish territory now, and is considered a long position. So my only concern here again is these very long candlesticks here. Oftentimes when you see that happen, it can retrace. But again, we looked at the big picture and the price action for Ethereum Classic should be much higher. So even though this is normally a concern for me, I'm not overly concerned about it in the big picture here because of the fact that Ethereum Classic should be much higher. It is valued, tremendously higher than it's at right now. Okay, so I'm not surprised to see this kind of ramp up. Will it continue upwards again? There's a decent chance of that because of its history, right? Ethereum Classic does have a tendency of going on some pretty significant and crazy bull runs. I mean, we didn't expect a 400% increase in 5 days, right? Well, perhaps we'll see something similar. Likely not 400%, but somewhere in the range, right? And let's go ahead and just take a quick gander here before we move on. How much of an increase is that so far? So we're at about, at its highest point, about 42, 43%. It's pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the 15-minute chart. And I like to leave this on here as well, just so we kind of know where the indication of a buy signal was on the Ichimoku cloud. And what we'll do is we'll just take a quick look at the EMA and VWAP notification. Now I have this enabled as kind of an option to tell us when there's good buy signals, because oftentimes I like to look for confirmation, which is two 15-minute green bars closing above the EMA and VWAP lines. We can see a little guy here, little yellow guy, little right here. You see that? That's basically telling us that we have confirmation above EMA and VWAP. So that could have been a good consideration for entry just before these two spikes here. And this is available through my premium Patreon account. Feel free to reference that and link to in the description below. Just bear in mind the first is always the best time to invest with Patreon based on their billing cycle. We'll cover that at a later date here, but here's the cool thing about all this. We can see a pretty significant bull run going on. So you see this right here. We see where the price bounces off the EMA and VWAP and continues upwards. Look at this. It tries to come back down, bounce off EMA again. So anytime we see that, that is essentially a good consideration for a buy signal. So hypothetically, just say you're late to the game and you didn't look at the cloud here. What you look for is this little yellow up arrow telling us that we got a candle bar closing above the EMA and VWAP line. Now, if you're new to the channel, the VWAP is a volume weighted average price. It's the volume expressed as a price of the last 24 hours. So it takes a 24-hour volume, tells us what the price should be based on that. And with the price being above that, that's basically working as a support level. The inverse applies as well. It can work as a resistance if it's on the downside, of course, but that's generally the concept. But right now, the VWAP is telling us, hey, the price should be $52, whereas it's upwards of 57. So that variance is right around 10-11%. Right? So you see at its highest point, it was right around 13%. Anytime there's a variance of over 10%, there's commonly a retracement or some sideways action. So just pay attention to how far away the price gets from the VWAP. So that's going to really tell you that that there might be a retracement soon. We probably see this go sideways for a little bit. It may or may not come down. I feel like with the big picture and everything overall, the price being as low as it is, we should still see some consolidation. So what I'm hoping for is to see another consolidation like this right here, and then it kick back up again. Okay, that would be the goal, because all good bull runs have these brief periods of consolidation between. Okay, so we want to see some sideways action for at least another couple of hours, and then another increase in price. Make sure you pay attention to the price action bouncing off the EMA line here. This is the EMA 15 that I use, by the way. The industry standard is the 9 and the 20. I prefer the 15 because it splits the difference. I have 1 instead of 2, and I just like to have a lot less indicators on my charts. You'll probably notice that I typically only have 2 or 3 tops per time frame, because again, every time frame has its own benefit. You can't use the same indicators in all time frames. The EMA and VWAP lines are only effective on shorter time frames, in my personal opinion. VWAP for sure. EMA kind of varies. Some people use the EMA on the 4-hour chart. I prefer SMA. But regardless, at this point with the 15, pay attention to that. So in other words, if the price continues to go sideways and the price stays above this EMA line, then you want to maybe consider adding to your position or just essentially writing it out until it continues to increase. But when it breaks below, which it hasn't done here in a while, then you want to be cautious. So let's just go ahead and look behind here. So here's an example of when the price comes up, right? And then it stays below the EMA. Do you see how this EMA line is kind of holding the price down? Even though it tries to break right here, it still pushes it back down. That's why the EMA is important to utilize in 15-minute time frame or shorter, because it really helps you understand the bullish or bearish momentum. Now, I'm not surprised to see this little red candle forming here, because again, it came up so hard, so fast. We saw that 12-13% variance in price from the VWAP to the price action. So I think that we're going to see some sideways action. It might come down a little, but we're probably going to see the EMA line tested in the near future. So just see how it bounces and reacts to it. If it comes out, bounces off, and then you get just say 2 15-minute solid green bars above the EMA line and it's still over VWAP, we're looking very good. That'd be another consideration for a long position. Because again, if you look back here, right here, you see these, there's 5 green bars, right? In other words, that was an hour and 15 minutes worth of bullish momentum. However, it didn't trigger, at least this indication doesn't trigger until we have 2 solid green bars closing over VWAP and EMA. To me, that's confirmation that I like to look for in taking entry because it just really helps me understand big picture. Because look, same thing could be applied here as well. If you look at this right here, same thing. These 2 are closing over EMA and VWAP, so this will be a good consideration for entry as well. So again, it's not a perfect exact science, but if you use that in conjunction with other indicators, you're looking good. That's why we look at the big picture and Bitcoin first, so we know what's going on. Furthermore, you also want to pay attention to the RSI. The very last thing to identify. RSI is over 70, just pay attention to it. You don't necessarily have to exit your position. Oftentimes the better time to get out would be when the RSI comes back down, like closer to here, and or when you feel comfortable with getting out yourself. Because again, bull runs like this, had you gotten out here, you would miss that second run, but you still would have made a decent percent. Right? So say you got in there and got out here, that would have been a 15%, 14% gain. Still a very good sign, right? So again, just be mindful of that. When the RSI peaks over 70, does not mean you have to exit your position, because that basically would have given you like a 1% increase. You want to consider paying closer attention and maybe consider trimming your position, but you never exit your position with RSI just barely coming up over 70. You want to wait for it to ideally come back down. So like right here, for example, it came back down. That could have been a good exit. Or just continue to wait because, of course, the price never broke the EMA line. So why sell based on RSI alone? That's why you only use it as a kind of an understanding of if something is oversold or overbought. But I would say utilizing the MACD and the VWAP line, the moving average can, sorry. The moving average 15 and the VWAP line, utilizing that is the most ideal way to go. Those should be your first primary and secondary indicators. The third, the tertiary would be the RSI as kind of a third and final reiteration of you're on the right track or not. Okay, and obviously use the MACD too, but again, the MACD it kind of gives you false signals on shorter time frames. So I prefer to use the MACD on the 4-hour chart or larger. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. But I think the RSI, VWAP, and moving average, the EMA, essentially the EMA 15, all 3 of these can be used together on the 15 most effectively. All right, so that's kind of what we're at here. And you could also circle around to the 1-minute chart. I don't typically do this. I do typically look at the 1-minute chart, but I don't base my decision on it. I just kind of helps me understand where it's at. As you can see, kind of a very similar price movement, except that the price is under the EMA line right now. Just bear in mind on the 1-minute chart, the EMA line is more responsive. It's more, hypersensitive, so to speak. So it can give you some false indications, which is why I like the 15 because it kind of gives us a better, more blended average. So that's why I like the 30 minutes of confirmation. It works better for me personally. But I'm also a patient trader too. So if you're impatient, perhaps the 1-minute chart might work better. But generally speaking, being a patient trader is extremely important in this industry. So make sure you take your time, make an informed decision, and have good risk tolerance too. You never want to risk, a tremendous amount of your portfolio at any given time. I would say no more than 1 to maybe 3%, but in turn shooting for a 3-to-1 ratio. All right, so that's a conversation for another day. So thank you so much for joining me here today. If you'd like signals as well, I do have a signal group through Patreon account. Link in the description below if you're interested in that. But more importantly, join my Telegram community, get engaged. Let's learn as much as we can so we can be better traders. I want you to trade for a lifetime instead of for just one day, okay? So thanks so much again for joining me here. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.